We have the Mayor of Oxnard, Tim Flynn. We also have Council Member Brian McDonald. Sorry, Brian. We also have with us from the Port of Hueneme, Harbor Commissioner and President Mary Ann Rooney. And Commissioner and Secretary Dr. Manuel Lopez. Also joining from the port is Commissioner Arlene Fraser and Executive Director Kristen Dacus. From the City of Oxnard, we also have Interim City Manager Karen Burnham. Deputy City Manager, Grace Magistral Hoffman. And Deputy City Manager, Martin Erickson. We have two Chiefs Williams here. We have Police Chief Jerry Williams and Fire Chief James Williams. From the Planning Commissioner, we have Steve Huber. Superintendent of the Oxnard High School District, Gabe Sumakian. Superintendent of the Oxnard School District, Dr. Cesar Morales. And I just want to let you know the rest of you are all very important people as well. Great. So I would like to acknowledge our sponsors today that help put this program on. Our major sponsors are Beardsley & Son, County Commerce Bank, New Indy Oxnard LLC, NRG Energy, Procter & Gamble.
Yeah. All the area legislators voted for the bill. Okay.
Ventura County Star, Vintage Production California LLC, and Walmart. Thank you very much. Our supporting sponsors today are Coastal Occupational Medical Group, Gold Coast Transit, Embassy Suites Mandalay Beach Resort, the Oxnard Firefighters Association, Oxnard Peace Officers Association, and Spirion Staffing. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to turn the program over to our chair-elect, Mr. Richard Faber.
I'm going to take a couple minutes to introduce the 6 people that haven't been introduced. That's the board of the Oxnard Chamber. Marvell Berry, are you here, Marvell? Tom Katie. Steve Kinney is a liaison to the board. I think Steve's here. Shane Moyer saw you. There you are, right there. Patty Pommier. Lisa Rivas. Mel Sheeler. Michael Song. And Martin Erickson gets introduced twice. Nice. And lifetime board member Florence Lamano. Big flows here somewhere. Did I miss anybody? Is Nancy Kirsten Schreiner here?
No.
Well, it's my pleasure to be able to introduce the mayor today. I'll go over his bio in a minute, but I got to tell you that Tim and I have a close friend that passed away not too long ago. But I can remember days when Tim was younger, and after I see what he's accomplished here, I don't know how he did it. We spent a lot of time having some good times on Friday nights, and I never would have thought all this would have been able to have been accomplished. So, way to go, Tim.
Thank you.
Tim was originally elected in 2004 and served from 2004 till 2008 on the council, and then was reelected in 2010 and became mayor in November of 2012. Earned his bachelor's in political science from UCSB, worked as an intern, this is tough for me, for an arms control national security issues interest group. Is that a lobbyist? Yeah, okay. And then subsequently worked for Congressional Research Service and the Library of the Congress. Continued his education at Frederick Wilhelms University in Bonn, West Germany. Obtained an MA in International Affairs. Received a Rotary International Graduate Fellowship to study there. Earned a secondary teaching degree and credential in social science at San Francisco State University. And he's been a teacher in the Oxnard Unified School District since 1993, teaching political science and German and social sciences. Currently resides in Oxnard with his wife Julie and 3 daughters. Please join me in welcoming the Mayor of Oxnard, Mr. Tim Flynn.
That was a very nice introduction, and I don't know if I can live up to all of that, but I'd like to thank the Chamber and everyone here present. It's exciting to be before you, and it's exciting that I have a chance to make a difference along with the City Council here in the City of Oxnard. And I do want to acknowledge my colleague Brian McDonald here, and I don't know if there are any other council members, but as you know, being a council member and the City Council is a part-time job. And I could say that as a former City Councilman that there could be kind of a part-time aspect to that. And you can ask Brian about that. He spends a lot of time in the office, but being mayor of a city is not part-time. It's a full-time job. So I'm a teacher full-time and quote-unquote part-time, I'm mayor of the city. But without the support of my wife, Julie, who's here, and I'd like to acknowledge her, just give her a round of applause. I wouldn't be able to do it. And also, I have the support, as Nancy said, once a mother, always a mother. My mom's here, Diane Flynn, so let's give her a round of applause. So I want to go ahead and start today and talk a little bit about what's happening in the City of Oxnard. The Star, Ventura County Star, it's the only newspaper in town. We used to have the LA Times. That's where a lot of people get information about what's happening in the city. And a lot of people watch city council meetings on television. But there are some very, very exciting things that have taken place over the past year. And I'm excited to be able to talk about those. But we have a lot of challenges here in the city, as all governments and all municipalities do. So Oxnard's not unique in the standpoint that we have a mammoth of a capital improvements budget that we're going to have to handle. Over $500 million, $500 million. It's just really the start for the next 10 years about what the City of Oxnard is going to need to do just to keep up. And I'll be going over a little bit of that, a little bit about what's happening in terms of other developments in the city. But there's one thing that most people really want to know right from the very beginning. Let's talk about money, right? Let's talk about money. Money is what makes it happen. And one of the things that Richard did mention is I've been in sales and marketing. I was in sales and marketing for 10 years. And I've been a car salesman. And I was a used car salesman too, and I'm proud of it. So I want to let people know that I know what it's like to have to make a quota. When I was in the title insurance industry, we got a report card every day. How many title orders did you open? So I know what it's like for businesses, especially over the last couple of years, to struggle, to try to make ends meet, to try to put bread on the table, and all the stress at home that's associated with money. So let's hope that I don't stress you out too much about Oxnard's finances. Why don't we go ahead and get started? And I was told I have a clicker here, so let's just see if I can do it. So here you have the Oxnard City Council. And there are 5 members of the city council, and they're elected for 4-year terms, and as mayor, I'm elected for a 2-year term, or the mayor is elected for a 2-year term. We've worked very closely together over the past year to tackle some very, very difficult issues. So I want to start really by thanking my council colleagues and also the city staff that's present, because we've really had a lot of hard work to do, and we've worked late into the night getting that work done. So the theme of this State of the City address is rethinking government. The financial challenges that the country is facing, that the state of California is facing, and here locally, they would cause anyone anxiety. Because if it's not the national debt, which is staggering to think about how much money this country is in debt, and that we've postponed maintenance on freeways and bridges all across this country, well, locally, on the state level, and here locally, it's no different. Roadways were not properly maintained for some time, bridges, infrastructure, and that's where that $500 million of borrowing over the next 10 years is going to take place, just to keep up with what's happening. And so, in order for us, with shrinking resources and with such a big task ahead of us, in order to meet this challenge, we have to rethink the way we do our jobs. And I try every day as a teacher, when I get up in the morning, what new strategies am I going to use to motivate younger people to be successful? And I just mentioned at the table here that, you know, I talk about homework all the time. I'm obsessed with homework. I can't help it. But I came up with an approximate idea about a high school graduate and a college graduate, and it said that college graduates earn approximately double in their lifetimes what a high school graduate does. And so I figured out how many homework assignments the average high school student is assigned, divided that by that double of salary, and it's about $500 over the lifetime per assignment. So if any of you in this room are having problems with your children doing your homework, $500. Just let them know. So I said it would be about money. Get them to rethink how they do their homework, and that's what we need to do here in Oxnard. We're rethinking how we do government. So the best thing I can start with today is this is a very simplistic way of saying what other people think about the city's finances, Standard & Poor's. And basically this is the equivalent of a credit rating, right? A credit report. This is the city's credit report. So the credit report is somewhat indicative of the city meeting its obligations and the overall financial health of the city. Because I could throw a lot of numbers here today. Everyone looks at them and they say, yeah, you know, I kind of paid attention, I kind of didn't. But this is something that's really easy to focus on. If you look to the left, it says AAA on top, on the left-hand side, on the very, very top. That's the highest bond rating, and that rating by Standard & Poor's is going to be that any entity or government entity or otherwise that's looking to borrow money, they're going to get the best terms. So it's like having a 760 or a 770, or in this case, a AAA would be close to 800 with a TRW, with a credit score. So here, the City of Oxnard, you can see the goal that's highlighted, which is AA, just below AAA. And you can see each and every one of the major funds of the city. Sorry, I don't have a pointer here. I don't think this is a pointer. Is this a pointer too? Okay, that's it. If you look at the left, wastewater, solid waste, water, general fund, and general obligation. This is all the borrowing that the city has done and the ratings that the city has on these funds. So can the city meet its obligations? Does the city have enough reserves to pay its bills? And that's what you need to walk away from here today, knowing very simplistically, without all these numbers, okay, what is the city's, in essence, what's the city's goal, and are we close to that goal? We can see, especially in water, where you see that little drop there, the general fund and general obligation, that we're very close to the council's goal, stated goal of a AA bond rating. I might add recently, and it's certainly a model to compare ourselves to, County of Ventura recently received a AAA rating. So that's something really to shoot for, right? Next, if you're thinking about debt, debt is not just on the national level and the state level, it's right here in the City of Oxnard. The City of Oxnard has just under $500 million of debt. And there's the figure in the lower right-hand corner, $441 million. Most of that debt, as you can see, is in the two lower categories, wastewater fund and water fund. And we have to invest, ladies and gentlemen, another $100 million in our wastewater plant. And again, deferred maintenance, many of these facilities were built up to a half century ago. All right, it's amazing to remind ourselves, if you're over 50, you're over a half century old, and so is the infrastructure here in the city. But you can see here what the obligations are based on the funds, because cities don't just have one fund, like the general fund pays for general services. There are many other funds, including enterprise funds, and I'll be talking about enterprise funds here in a second. So if you look at water there on the very bottom, $196 million. And soon, we'll be borrowing another $100 million because the City of Oxnard is revolutionary in not just looking for sources of water, but actually recycling water, taking sewer water, and making that water eventually potable. Right now in the state of California, if water is recycled, even though that water is cleaner and it is purer, then the water that comes out of the tap, state law doesn't allow it to go directly into the tap. It has to go into underground aquifer first, be there for 6 months, and then it can be extracted again. We know we have a water crisis here. And so the city investing in this infrastructure, and I always give credit where credit's due. The former previous Public Works Director, Ken Ortega, had the vision on the GREAT program, and indeed it's great, and it's great for the people of Oxnard, because we are going to have in the city of Oxnard a reliable source of water for time to come. We'll talk about that more a little bit later. Now, one of the things that's happened in the recession is that the General Reserve Fund, on the general fund, has dipped below our council goal, which you can see there to the left, and it should be $19.5 million. And that's 18% of the general fund budget. Again, the general fund pays for basic services like fire, police, libraries, etc. And the city council or the debt has gone, or our reserves down in 2013 to $11,400,000. It should be up closer to $19 million. And a lot of this has been to avoid some of the draconian cuts that have taken place in other cities, which have affected service levels in other cities, in particular fire departments and police departments. Most people will say, and it is true, if you're facing a real difficult situation, you've got to make the difficult choices. And when some city governments make difficult choices that affect public safety, for one, the consequences are found out in the community. We can see in the city of Ventura that it's not necessarily directly linked just to the size of their police force or the size of their fire department. But we see, if we read the papers, that there's a lot of activity in the city of Ventura, and some of that is as a consequence of cutting back on public safety. So there's always going to be a risk, there's always going to be a reward for doing so. But we have $11 million in the bank. The fact of the matter is, we need to get back up to 18%, which is the $19.5 million, and I've asked that the city consider, and or the city council, that we need to work to getting that rainy day fund back up to 25%. I might note that our small neighbor, just to the south of Oxnard, Port Hueneme, has a 50% general fund reserve. Arguably, again, much smaller than the city of Oxnard. I think they have an $18 million general fund budget, and they have $9 million in the bank. So they have right now a little bit less than what the city of Oxnard has, and of course, the sizes of the cities aren't really a fair comparison. So we really got to work hard at getting these reserves back up. Unemployment. You look at the national trend, 7.9% in 2013, and today it's 6.6%. And on the state level, 10.4%, and in 2014, it's really dipped to 8.5%. But then we look at the city of Oxnard. In 2013, it was 12.2%. And in this past year, 10.3%. So we're still in double digits. And what does that mean? Let's translate that. How do we digest or filter this information? Oxnard has a large, unskilled labor force. And unskilled labor, people pay a price, especially in the recession. Many people with college degrees Many people that have gone on to get their high school degree and take at least a 2-year degree, they're not suffering to the extent that people that didn't have attain those educational levels. And later I'll be focusing on education. I can in essence say that obviously money is very important in any city, but education should be the top priority of any city. So many of you know that the Affordable Care Act unrolled this past year, and many people have asked me, well, how will that affect cities? In the very first year, it'll cost the City of Oxnard's general fund $800,000, and the total amount is $1.3 million in the very first year of the Affordable Care Act. We have many people that have worked for the city. Some of those people have worked for the city over a decade, and they did not have health benefits. Over a decade, they didn't have health benefits. So now, those people, if they're working over 30 hours a week, will have those benefits. So pensions. This is probably, especially in Ventura County with an issue on the ballot, people want to know more about pensions. And they want to know what's being done about pensions and locally. And let's face it, ladies and gentlemen, sometimes this is very, very difficult to follow. It really is difficult because pensions were designed to pay for themselves. So just like Social Security, you contribute half of your income and your employer contributes the other half. That's what pensions are supposed to be. When the stock market is returning high yields, many pensions, not all, meet their obligations, their liabilities, and sometimes they even exceed them. There were good times in the 80s and 90s where many pensions were actually even overfunded. And I'll talk about it later when it comes to the City of Oxnard. But if we look at the state of California on the left and on the right, these are the two largest publicly financed employee pensions in the world. CalPERS, California Public Employees Retirement System, and CalSTRS, the state teacher retirement system. And we can see that 83% of the obligations of CalPERS are right now, as we speak, are funded. So there's a funding gap of 17% on those longer term obligations. Now, CalSTRS, and I have to admit, I'm a member of CalSTRS. CalSTRS is 2/3. So 1/3 of that fund, right now, the money, no one knows where that money is going to come from. And the governor of the state of California has promised to tackle that. What's it like here in the City of Oxnard? Don't allow the graphs to deceive you because it might look like fire is, it might look just because of the size of the graphs. Look at the percentages. So according to the finance director of the City of Oxnard, 81% of the pension obligations for the fire department are being met right now as we speak. 82% of the police department and 86% of the city, generally speaking. So that isn't bad, especially compared to other entities, and we've heard about cities throughout the state of California going bankrupt because they didn't save enough for a rainy day, they didn't save enough for the pensions, and those cities, San Bernardino and many others, declared bankruptcy, in part because of pensions. Well, the City of Oxnard, I might add, in the good times, many cities and municipalities stopped funding the pensions. They said, hey, it's beyond what it needs to be. It's 110%, 103%. We don't have to start, we'll stop paying into it. We can use that money for something else. The City of Oxnard continue paying into that, and that's why those percentages are as high as they are today. Obviously, the goal is to get to 100%. So, what does all of this mean? We really got to rethink the way we do business. And for those of you that are in sales, for those of you, of course, most of you here are in business, others are in professions, in government and in education. The fact of the matter is we have to find a way on a daily basis. It's kind of like Six Sigma self-improvement program. How can we rethink what we're doing? So let's take a look very quickly here. This is what the City of Oxnard is doing in a very simplistic way to begin to rethink how we spend money. We have approximately $108 to $109 million general fund budget. Remember, general fund pays for basic services in the city. Well, this year, the council at its strategic summit decided that priority-based and performance-based budgeting is the way we're going to approach our budget. And that means the following. If you take a look at the screen and you see number 1 all the way down to number 4, you see the highest priority and the lowest priority. Well, performance-based budgeting, in essence, is taking individual departments, placing those departments in all of those categories, looking at how the departments are spending money, and in particular, determining what the priorities are. What's the highest priority in the police department? What's the highest priority in the fire department? What's the highest priority in development services, the library, etc.? And going all the way down to the lowest priorities. Now, I'm going to be frank with you. Part-time city councils have staff members do a vast majority of the work. Remember, city councils that are part-time, they work full-time jobs, they come, they work 20, 30, whatever the amount of hours they work a week. But when it comes to budgeting, you have these thick documents, and it's sifting through them. Usually, the way most governments do it is they package it, present it, there's several hearings, there's public input, etc., and the city council might make some minor adjustments, the budget's approved. And I would call those status quo budgets. Well, we're going to end status quo budgets in the city of Oxnard because with shrinking resources, we can no longer have status quo budgets. The money is not there. And I'm not here to be a pessimist because later we'll be talking about business and economic growth. But the fact is that even with real positive economic growth, we can't continue to live the way we've been living. And we've exceeded our means. All of us know that. And the reason why so many people were in trouble in this last great recession is people simply put, lived beyond their means. And when the market took a drop, everybody's left with this big debt, this mounting debt. So our first thing is priority-based budgeting with performance-based outcomes. Having reasonable, measurable outcomes when it comes to the police department. We have a community policing program. As an example, the police chief hasn't been able to fund a majority of those, or find or fill a majority of those positions. So it hasn't been fully implemented. Once it's fully implemented, what are measurable outcomes with community policing? The fire department recently, the city council approved a new fire station 8 at College Park. Specifically, what metrics will the city council and the government use to judge that new fire station, which is going to cost somewhere between $15 and $20 million, and the staffing will be $3 million a year for the firefighters that will be at Station 8. What will be the performance-based outcomes? Well, the first thing is response times. The national response time for emergency calls is under 5 minutes. And the city of Oxnard is not at that target, especially with fire. And we went many years without approving fire stations, without hiring new firefighters, and response time suffered as a result of it. So, performance-based budgeting is going to allow the city council to really get its hands on spending, determine what are the most important priorities, and if necessary, make cuts. Secondly, rethinking government means that we really need to rethink regional partnerships. Governments that I've come to understand, and it's not just the police department or the fire department or any specific department, cities and governments oftentimes are very parochial. We do it the best. Nobody else can do it better than we can, so we're only going to do it. And the neighboring city next door is going to do the very same thing. That costs a lot of money. Kind of like having as many school districts as we have here in Ventura County, even here in the city of Oxnard. The question is, should we have this many school districts, elementary school districts here in the city of Oxnard? We need to begin rethinking regional partnerships. Number one, I'm going to give you an example of this. Let's take water reuse. The city of Ventura recently was sued because its effluent, its sewer water, was going into the ocean near the Santa Clara River Delta. And the Wichita Foundation, an environmental group, sued the city, won in court, and I believe that it was somewhere in the neighborhood of about a $60 million judgment that the city of Ventura needs to do something with its sewer water, and it shouldn't be polluting the Santa Clara River estuary and fragile habitat. The city of Oxnard needs sewer water. Can you imagine that? We need sewer water. Because the grade program and recycling the water, we got to have a source of that water. So about half of all the water that our recycling plant can or should recycle could come from the city of Ventura if we strike a deal with Ventura. And that means building a pipeline from Ventura sewer plant underground. No one's going to smell it. I know, when you go by that sewer plant, it's not particularly nice. It'll go into our facility. We're going to recycle that water, and believe it or not, that water then is going to go to farmers. It's going to water irrigation, etc. Now, I know it's very uncomfortable for people to talk about that, but as soon as that first drop of water is produced, all right, I'm going to take a drink of it. And I promise you I'm going to take a drink of it, okay? It's purer water than what comes out of the tap. So that's one of the examples, and I've been working, and I know other council members perhaps have been having conversations with Ventura City Council members. Look, we need your sewer water. What can we do to make this happen? If Ventura is trying to make its mind up, do we want to build a facility like Oxnard? It'd be cheaper for us to simply send our water to Oxnard. We need that water, and we need that sewer water. That's an example. 2, public safety. Training, right? We have in Oxnard a great fire department. I'm not going to come up here as mayor and tell anybody that we have anything but the best, and I believe that. I'm sincere. But we have, when it comes to fire training, all right, we host and we have our own fire academies because Oxnard has over 100 years of its tradition in its fire department about the way we do business. We can save money in fire training, just as one idea, by partnering with neighboring cities and or even the county. The county offers that training. Yes, some of our people will have to be retrained to rethink how they do that, but that's just one example. And continuously, when it comes to public safety, we need to look, because public safety consumes the majority of money in every single municipal government, the county, the cities. How can we come together? How can we make police departments better equipped, better serve the public, make the officers safer, both fire and police, and how can we save money at the same time? People sometimes say to me, it's impossible. Do you think it's impossible? Think about it for a second. Of course, I want, like students, I want everyone to say, no, I don't think it's impossible. Next, procurement. Just recently, we purchased a fire truck. We purchased that fire truck in conjunction with a joint purchase with several cities, including San Jose. That is economy of scale. We need to maximize economy of scale, so we're not individually purchasing anything. We should be teaming up with 15, 20, 30, 50 other cities because of economy of scale. And that means that the taxpayers in the end are going to get the best deal for the money. Remember, I'm a car salesman, so I do think about small amounts of money. Every penny is meaningful. Next, education and culture. I'll be talking about this later. The City of Oxnard subsidizes the Performing Arts Center by the tune of $1 million a year. $1 million a year. We have an exciting idea, a possibility to partner with local schools. I'll get into that more specifically later, but let's get the Performing Arts Center out of the red. Let's accommodate the school districts at the same time with a magnet school performing arts program. I'll talk about that in a little bit. The reason why the City Council has had some very late night sessions is that we have been after these 3 challenges and calamity for the city, because an enterprise fund, as they were originally developed in the 1980s, was to have a fund that would then pay for itself. The golf course, revenues, expenditure, it's a wash. Okay? Performing Arts Center, people go to the Performing Arts Center, all the cost for it, it pays for itself. And the same thing, of course, with our trash facility. These 3 entities, ladies and gentlemen, have and will continue to bleed the city dry unless they are dealt with. And for years, decisions on these issues alone. I'm not saying previous councils didn't make attempts to deal with the financial issues related to these facilities, but it went on way too long, and the city council now is poised on all three of them to make these not just break even, but money-making enterprises. Enterprise fund. Let's first talk about the trash facility. The Del Norte Regional Trash Facility. I don't know if you guys know, the city trash trucks and also trash from Hueneme goes to this facility, and the trash is sorted. Recyclables are taken out, it's put back into a loader, and it goes to two different dumps. One is the Tolan Road landfill in Santa Paula, the other one is the landfill in Simi Valley. Okay? City council by a majority taking over the city's trash facility. When, Mr. Flynn, you were in sales, you were in private industry, when can anyone say that the private sector can't do something better than the public sector? Almost as if we're just two, private sector, they're Martians, and the public sector, they're, I don't know, they're from Pluto. We're all Americans. I mean, we're all people, residents of the city of Oxnard and here in the county of Ventura. Why shouldn't the public sector be able to compete with the private sector? I mean, it's your taxpayers' money. Do we want the public sector to continue to be inefficient? Take a look at this. 10 years ago, the city of Oxnard did a study. Could the city take over its facility and would it save money? And the answer was a resounding yes. And for whatever reason, the city council decided not to act on that. And for 10 more years, we continued with a private contractor. Ladies and gentlemen, what's the bottom line when you're looking at this, at the Del Norte recycling facility? It is anticipated next year, if you look at, I'm so excited about this, I want to jump down here on the stage and jump up there and show you. 2014, 2015, you look all the way down, this facility, it is projected will save $2.6 million in the first year of operation. $2.6 million. And let's take a look at some of the reasons why. Here's the trash being unloaded here at the facility. Okay? Since the city took this facility over approximately 7 or 8 weeks ago, the city is diverting 15 tons of trash a day from the landfill. Let me go back. Under the previous private contractor, it was a ton a day. I mean, I'm going to throw my hands up and I'm going to say the same thing that any of you go, well, how can that be? How can you have 15 tons being diverted now, but only a ton before? What does that mean? Every ton that's diverted is $36. We're talking about dumping, but there's so many other costs. Haulers, the people that get paid for that, their benefits, there's a cost to the environment of going back and forth, all of this stuff, congestion on the roadways. Well, somewhere between $540 and $900 per ton per day. Wait a minute. Tim, are you telling me that the trash facility just on this alone is saving about $14,000 per day? I don't know about you, but if I were saving the car lot where I used to work over at Mazda of Oxnard 14 grand a day, I'd be the CEO of Mazda. This is farm film. We used to have to pay people to take the farm film away. They're now paying us. Mattresses. All these people get rid of their mattresses, right? Bed bug craze, all that kind of stuff. We've seen more mattresses. We used to have to pay people to take those away. They're paying us now. People have figured out that there's value in recycling these mattresses, and that means cash for the city. So when we divert from the landfill, that's just the $500 to $900 a day per ton of the cost savings. Think about all of the recycled value of these materials and how that's going to make the difference. Finally, next door to the facility, there's an empty lot. facility. The city uses storage or currently stores there. We have the ag industry would like to use this lot for the strawberry season. We're working on that, maybe temporarily to accommodate them for staging areas. Well, here's the bottom line. There's a rail line. How many of you knew there was a rail line that went right into the MRF? It's never been used for trash. Never. And to the right, the state of California is moving very quickly to make sure that food waste, right now it goes into the dump. We're not going to be able to do that anymore. We're going to have to recycle that. And it's called right from the very get-go that Oxnard has one of the best and nicest golf courses in Ventura County. It does. How many of you have golfed at River Ridge Golf Course? Raise your hand if you've golfed there. Okay? All right. It's a great course. Bottom line is, it's not making the kind of money we need it to make. Remember, performance-based outcomes. Let me just go back. River Ridge Golf Course opened in 1993, 18 holes. Victoria Lakes course opened in 2005, 18 holes. Rounds of golf. In order to understand what the problem is with your own facility, you've got to compare it to something else. How do you know what to do unless you compare it? Well, I took a lot of time. I went to the City of Ventura. I met with the City of Ventura's finance director. I got our own finance director. We met with the city finance director of Ventura and said, hey, what's going on here with these golf courses? And he was the finance director of Ventura. He was fascinated with this. He said, look, we have a $300,000 deficit. We got to get that under control. I'm fascinated with this study. Why did you do this? And I said, because we have a golf course that's really costing the general fund a lot of money. Here's the bottom line. Oxnard, which has, from my perspective, and anyone here is from Ventura, my saving grace is my wife's from Ventura, so don't be offended. We have a better golf course. We have a clubhouse. It's hilly. It's a beautiful golf course. And I'm not taking away from Ventura. I've golfed there also. But ladies and gentlemen, Ventura in 2012 had 112,000 rounds of golf, paid rounds of golf. The city of Oxnard in that same year had 75,000. If you're a business person, aren't you going to look at that? I mean, and should we not look at it because we're in government? In terms of revenues, you can see Ventura and Oxnard, that Ventura takes in close to $500,000 a year more than Oxnard. And you can see that expenses are somewhat comparable. I've kind of gone back and forth over this expense report. I know one thing, that we pay much more for our contract than what Ventura pays for its contract. And these are the subsidies from the general fund and or borrowing. And what I have said is, we got to stop borrowing. Borrow from what? There's no more money left. We're going to borrow from wastewater and then our bond rating's going to go down? We're going to borrow from another enterprise fund? We have to make decisions to get this under control. This is the subsidy since 2008. $250,000 in 2008, and today it's $2.5 million. That, to be genuine about this, includes bond payments on capital improvements at the golf course. Let me tell you a major difference. What the city of Ventura did, and let me say, I'm a cheerleader for Oxnard, but there's nothing wrong with giving another city or a neighboring city credit when credit's due. The city of Ventura, before they invested in the infrastructure, before they made the capital improvements, they did a market study, independent market study. And the market study said, golf is losing 1 million golfers a year in America. Why would you make capital improvements on something where the forecast is it's going down and down? That's why they don't have a clubhouse. But they don't have the debt. And they're taking in over $500,000 more than the city of Oxnard. So there is something very important. And that is that since this contract was awarded in 1993, it has not been competitively bid. Anyone stand up if I'm wrong. It hasn't been competitively bid. And so in order for the private sector to work in government, you have to have competition. If you have no competition, it's not going to work. So what are the city council considerations? What are we doing? Number one, Mayor Pro Tem Ramirez thought it was very important we restore the golf commission. It's a good idea. Number two, and I have to admit I'm a little bit embarrassed about the independent study, but we got to get somebody outside that's going to look in and give us advice that's objective about what are our options with the golf course. Next, restructuring the current contract. 8 months ago, the city council gave direction by a majority to the city's finance director. There's 4.5 years left on that contract. Restructure the agreement. Let's work with the operator to come up with something that's going to work for him and work for the city. What are some of the possibilities? We could lease it out for a percentage of the revenues. So instead of us, and again, there's going to be those capital improvements, and those capital improvements, no matter what anybody does with a golf course, those capital improvements, we're going to have to pay them, right? So there's not a miracle from heaven about the capital improvements. The good thing about the capital improvements, one of the bonds is going to expire in 2016. That's just over $1 million a year in payments. So that $2.5 million subsidy could go down to $1.5 million. But we still are not out of the woods yet. We could buy out the existing contract. That's a possibility, and that was offered to us by the finance director. And finally, hire a full-time marketing agent as part of the contract. One of the things we took a look at least I took a look at, and others, is that Ventura had a full-time marketing person, and Oxnard did not. Not that the current operator doesn't market it, not that they don't do marketing. The question is, if it's not making the money, then we got to change it up. We got to rethink how we're doing business at the golf course. Performing Arts Center. This is the third and last one. The Performing Arts Center was built in 1968. That's also when City Hall was built. And this is long before conflict of interest laws were in place. Who was the architect on Oxnard City Hall? A councilman, Don Miller. All right? So that was before all this conflict of interest stuff started up. But again, the infrastructure is tired. This is the subsidy by the city's general fund of the Performing Arts Center. Basically, what you need to understand is it's about $1 million every year. Now, many people will say that performing arts centers are losers in terms of money. Thousand Oaks, they got to subsidize that and everything else. But the subsidy by the city here, when we've looked at neighboring performing arts centers, is about 3 times higher than it is at comparable performing arts centers. So we got to get our act together. It's a great performing arts center. Who has been to the New West Symphony? How many of you know in this room that we have a world-class symphony called the New West Symphony that performs at Oxnard's PAC? How many people, be honest, don't know? Okay, how many people have attended a concert? All right, so think about it, right? I want to promote it. There's a concert tonight. All right, so let's take a look at this. There's the facility right there. 1,600 seats, state-of-the-art acoustics. About 10 years ago, the city did a study on this Performing Arts Center because the city contemplated knocking it down and building homes there. The study came back, the consultant said, some of the best acoustics in the state of California. We never had another discussion about knocking it down and putting homes there, okay? But it does need a lot of repairs. What are we going to do? We need to rethink our partnerships, in particular with school districts. I've been a teacher for 20 years. Oxnard schools, most of them, not all of them, are severely overcrowded. Pacifica High School and Oxnard High were built for approximately 2,400 students. There are 1,000 students over that capacity at both of those schools. When the Oxnard Union High School District makes a decision to build a new high school, say if it's for 2,000 or 3,000 students, if that's what they were going to do or would do, all the students are already there. It's not for future students, it's for the students now. The problem is land's expensive, and there's not enough land right now to build these schools. I have always been an advocate of infill development, and I've been an advocate of reuse. Why don't we take something that's old and tired, that has tremendous ability and capabilities, and why don't we think about a magnet school, a performing arts school on this campus? And if you'd like to see a bit of a vision, there it is right there in Cleveland. Cleveland, Ohio has the Cleveland Performing Arts Center. It houses 775 children. This is underway right now, this new campus, this new building. It started last year, it'll be finished next year. It's approximately 128,000 square feet. Why is it that we can't have a magnet school? Oxnard does not have one magnet school. And we're talking about attracting employers to the city. It's one thing to say, ladies and gentlemen, Oxnard's a great place to work. Oxnard's a great place to do business. But if there's a perception or in reality that the schools are not meeting the expectations of parents who I say, look at the API scores, the way a parent or someone looks at consumer reports to buy a car, it's going to be very difficult to attract people to the city to say, I want to work here, and Tim, I want to live in Oxnard. So I just don't want to work in Oxnard, I want to live in Oxnard. And if there's a performing arts school in the center of our downtown, and it's a brand new state-of-the-art facility, and we can take the skill of the people from Hollywood. You know how many people, Hollywood Beach is named Hollywood Beach for a reason, okay? We are right next to Hollywood, ladies and gentlemen. Why can't we have Hollywood in Oxnard? Why can't we create a facility that will benefit both kids and those that would attend the theater? We are going to begin those discussions briefly. I have 5 more minutes. We're going to begin those discussions briefly with the school districts, and we'll have more there. Nancy threw me off when she said 5 minutes. Now I'm going to get through the next half hour in 5 minutes. Update very quickly on the 10-point jobs plan that I introduced last year. One of the things I did not do is segment it into quadrants of short-term, medium-term, and longer-term objectives. I'm here just to give you some quick updates. Enterprise zone. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that here in a second. Well, let's talk about one-stop shop. A year ago when I came to you, I said, we need to be more customer service oriented. We need to be just like the private sector, just like a bank. When you walk into a bank, there's a concierge desk. Why don't we have one in our city service center? The service center was built to bring all the departments together. The problem is they're all doing their jobs, but they're not communicating to the extent that they could. I mean, that's a human thing. That's not unique in Oxnard. So we need someone to facilitate businesses. In the next 2 months, I will bring a final proposal to the City Council. It's been before them several times. We're going to make a decision, yes or no. Are we going to take scarce resources and invest it in future businesses of the City of Oxnard? A job squad. This is also something I'll be taking to the council in 2 months, right at budget time. And I want to go out, and I'm a salesman. I want to go out and I want to be a part of the team that brings new employers to the City of Oxnard. Higher paying, new economy jobs, biotech, medical research, and high-tech fields, computer industry. Those are going to be the higher paying jobs. That's going to get the prosperity issue in a different bracket. Enterprise zones, I worked with Jeff Garrell, Assemblyman Jeff Garrell, on his bill, AB 146, to establish an enterprise zone here in the City of Oxnard. Unfortunately, that did not succeed. It was replaced by Assembly Bill 93 and Senate Bill 90, which is the governor's tax hiring credit. And believe it or not, that zone right there, let's see if it zooms in, it doesn't zoom in. That zone right there is the governor's 5 newly created enterprise zones in the City of Oxnard. That is one of them there. And this proposal, here we go. And this proposal gives unbelievable benefits to manufacturers. So it's not for restaurants, it's not for retail, but it's for manufacturing. And it's everything from tax credits up to $60,000 over a 5-year time period, to paying 4.5% less on sales taxes for goods that are sold. Also, an investment in equipment and tax write-offs on new equipment, especially focused around new futuristic industries. I'm going to just go through this. We have a street problem here in the city of Oxnard, all right? We have $120 million left in street repairs to do. $40 million alone are just alleys. In the next 2 months, a proposal will come before the city council to dial out every remaining residential neighborhood for $33 million. $3 million will bond that over a 15-year time period. I think it's a worthy proposal for Measure O money. And I'm just going to skip through this now that Nancy's given me that 5 minutes. Wait a minute here, what was that? Jobs created from just street servicing, that's part of the longer-term jobs plan. Ladies and gentlemen, over 930 jobs just related to what we plan on doing in the next couple of years just with streets. And I am concluding here. Additional highlights, ethics reform. As you know, to the far left is a copy of the district attorney's report over 2 years ago. From that district attorney's report, the city held 2 ethics workshops, the next ones, to both with the visioning process with the public and the city staff and the council. It's now in the Policies and Procedures Committee. It's going to be my recommendation to that committee that we have a blue ribbon panel of members of the business community, procurement experts from the base that have really good federal experience in procurement, and citizens of the city of Oxnard that will take a look at the DA's report, look at what happened in these workshops, and present recommendations for the city council to change its policies. We've done a lot of changing, but we have a long way to go. We've had some great highlights in the past year. How many people have been to Yard House? Raise your hand if you've been to Yard House. Great. I thought it was going to zoom in. And then there, of course, is Famous Dave's Barbecue House. How many people have been there? All right, Famous Dave's is a lot of fun. And then, of course, the collections. We have many more exciting things that are going to happen in the collections. Collections is a really exciting thing. And I want to say, you've got to give credit where credit's due. I didn't have anything to do with the collections because it was my predecessors on the city council. So when you see them around town, you thank them. Don't thank me, okay? Because I didn't make the initial decisions about this particular development. Thank them for their good work because this turned out to be very successful. We're going to be, this is the city's great program, water facility. All right? I don't have time to talk about it. All I got to say is we have a water shortage right now. We can address almost 100% of that water shortage just with this plan. Almost finished. My last slide. Last year, I showed this building as a futuristic, high-tech, new economy jobs facility. That could be at Sakuoka Farms. That building could be at Sakuoka Farms. But what we're not thinking about really is the vision. The vision from this is imagine who are going to be the workers in that building. Do we want to import workers from the Silicon Valley? Perhaps. Do we want workers coming from India? Perhaps. How about our own children? How about the 21st century learning that the superintendent of the Oxnard Union High School District and the board has decided upon of relating what students are learning in the classroom with futuristic jobs, getting them ready either for college or getting them ready to go to work. Our children should be in that facility. Our children should be the ones that reap the rewards of this prosperity of the city of Oxnard. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been my pleasure. I hope I didn't bore you. And I'm excited. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Mayor. On behalf of the chamber.